Last week we had an interview with midwife Jen Tehuia about Oranga Tamariki's policy and practice when it comes to the uplift of Māori babies. It was Jen's application that prompted the current Waitangi Tribunal hearing into those practices, and the interview raised many issues and questions that we will continue to address on Breakfast. This is such an important story. However, in the course of the interview, Jen raised concerns that Māori babies may be being removed from Aotearoa and mentioned the Open Home Foundation. Now, there are two Open Home Foundations, the New Zealand one, who does do fostering, including permanent fostering, and whose operating revenue included $21 million in government contracts for the June 2019 year. They have declined to appear this morning, but they have issued a statement saying they do not do international adoptions. Full stop. We would love to talk to them about what they do, but they say they do not do international adoptions. But Open Home Foundation International, which arose out of the New Zealand operation, is small and very grassroots. And in order to clarify any confusions about what they do, we are very grateful to be joined by Deirdre O Sullivan, Executive Director of the Open Home Foundation International. Morena, Deirdre, nice to have you with us.
Morena, John, thank you for having me.
Right, let's get this out of the way. Do you do international adoptions?
No, not at all. We don't do any kind of adoptions.
Do you do permanent fostering?
No, we do not.
So no permanent placements, no long-term fostering that might constitute an equivalent? Okay. No. What do you do?
So, fundamentally, we believe that every child has a God-given right to live in a home that's safe, where they feel loved and cared for, they get an education, and they receive health care. And as I'm sure all your viewers know, that's not always the case in a lot of the world. So we're fortunate enough to work with partners in 6 different local communities around the world. And what we do is try and create situations where the children in that community can feel safe and loved and remain in their homes. And so it varies from country to country depending on what our local partners tell us needs to be done, because obviously we don't go in and think we know what should be happening in Rwanda.
Yeah, absolutely. In Rwanda, which is the example you just used, do you do fostering in Rwanda?
No, we don't. What we do, the fundamentals of what our organisation does is social work training. So New Zealand social workers go into these different communities and provide training in social work to community leaders, to church leaders, to social workers in those countries. So that's the fundamentals of what we do.
And I want to come back to something you said earlier, the God-given right. So you're very much a Christian organisation, right? We
are. We're a Christian organisation. We don't always work in Christian communities. So we work in all sorts of communities around the world, and we're not a missionary society. And so our founder was moved by, as he calls it, the grace of God, to work into protecting children and working with children. However, our ethos is that we work with all faiths or none.
And all faiths or none is a good ethos. And your founder is the same founder as the Open Home Foundation New Zealand, right? And there's some confusion about, but you are quite separate and distinct.
Yes, absolutely. Completely separate organisations. We have nothing to do with each other. Well, we say hello, and so it's the same rootstock. So
same rootstock in terms of the founder and in terms of the ideas and objectives. In terms of what Open Home Foundation New Zealand's doing, with $23 million in revenue from government contracts, are you able to comment on that, or is that not something you want to talk about?
I can't. Right. I'm sorry, and I'm not meant to be difficult. Absolutely. It's a different organisation.
Absolutely, I understand that entirely. Yeah. So where does your money come from? It's good old-fashioned fundraising, is it?
It's good old-fashioned fundraising, and I'll tell you something, John. I've actually only been in this job for a couple of months, and I have been blown away by all these New Zealanders who you wouldn't know, a builder in Tawa or a teacher in Tauranga, who through their donations have built entire schools, have built entire community centres, have provided whole villages in Zambia, every family with a pig.
Have you managed to get to one of these places yet? I know you've only had the job, since June or something?
No, I haven't.
No, because of COVID, absolutely. No one travelling. But have you spoken to people who've had the experience of seeing how transformative?
Oh my goodness, yes, I have, which is, to be honest, almost everyone on my board have got involved because they've had that experience. And the thing is, again, which I didn't realise until very recently, is how far a few New Zealand dollars can go. So someone in New Zealand can give $10,000 and change an entire village of 300 people and make them, put money into micro enterprises. They become self-sustaining. And so all those children in those villages are looked after and cared for and get an education.
And also, if there is money in the village and there is income in the village, it takes the socioeconomic, the economic pressures off family, whānau and home, doesn't it? And that
Definitely.
is something, and this is the oranga tamariki conversation, isn't it? Which I know you're not part of, and that's Open Home Foundation New Zealand who aren't here this morning. But you do believe that the best place for children to be, wherever possible, is at home.
Definitely. But of course, we work in communities also where there are a lot of orphan children or children who, for whatever reason, aren't living with their parents. So again, we try and help create a community where all children are looked after, regardless of whether they belong to you or not, which is why, it's really exciting, some of the work we do, the one I brought up in Zambia. The pigs we gave to every family, which they've put together as a village and created one big piggery, that money supports every child in that village, regardless of their parenting situation. And that's really exciting, and that's extraordinary that's being funded just by ordinary people in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's a wonderful and transformative thing to do, Deirdre, and we really appreciate you coming in this morning. Thank you so much. Deirdre O Sullivan, who is the what are you, Deirdre? What's your title? Chief Executive Director?
Executive Director, whatever you want to call me, John.
No, Executive Director is flash as of the Open Home Foundation International.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deirdre. We so appreciate you coming in.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me, John.
And it's nice to talk to you.